So I guess I didn't want this to be like, your usual lectures that you guys are used to getting. Even though we're in a lecture environment, I feel very, professory today, which is pretty cool. So this is why I've included a lot of memes in my presentation, so look forward to these. This is me gallivanting around in America just a couple of years ago. I think I'll put it up better, come on. Look at me, I'm beautiful. But yeah, the reason I went to America was I went to play poker, and that's something you'll hear about as well. It's a cool story. I just have to show you guys this. Like, this is me, ladies band, all the time. No, that's not me, usually me. Okay, that one. I'm not allowed to legally talk about this. Charges still being filed. But okay, here's the regular inspirational stuff that I should be probably focusing on, right? So hands up now, right? We're going to do this interactive little thing here. How many of you guys, when you were growing up, how many of you wanted to be a doctor, like when you were young? Okay. Now, keep your hands up if coming year 11, 12, that's when you really started thinking, hey, this could be for me. Keep your hands up if any of this applies to you. And now, how many of you guys, really like the idea of being able to help people and do all that kind of stuff? Right? That's actually quite a lot of you. That's good to see in a way, but I just got to say to all of you guys are the biggest nerds I've ever seen in my life. Me, when I was growing up, I wanted to be in the NBA, right? Actually, no, first thing I wanted to do at 17 was get a girlfriend, right? I think every 17-year-old guy is sort of in that boat. But yeah, I guess once I hit 17 though, hit year 12, this is where you guys get to judge me. I finally started to actually like school. Because I guess for the first time, I was studying for something. I wanted to be Hawkeye Pierce from MASH, or JD from Scrubs, that might be a bit more relevant. So that guy who can go into hospital, make people smile, do something with their lives. And I had, this real big goal that I was going to for the first time. But after a while, I think year 12, as it does for everyone, started getting to me. So basketball, I used to train 5 or 6 days a week. Suddenly I was going down to 3, then 2. Then I didn't even really want to train, right? After that, the stress started really getting to me. I had a couple of long nosebleeds. That was a bit weird, right? I then started sleeping 16 hours a day for some reason before my exams. And that was me, someone who was chucking all-nighters like months in advance. And I think I really knew something was wrong at that point because I went to my GP. I remember this day. I think I'll remember it for the rest of my life. I was sitting in the backyard when the phone rang. And Dad told me, Nikhil, you need to go into hospital. And there I was in the lounge chair, my dog's head in my lap, looking at the pool, looking at the pine trees, and I wanted to stay there forever. Because at that point, I knew something was up. So I went through emergency. And even me, at 17, I knew something was up when I went through and they took me right away, straight into hospital when there's people screaming and stuff outside. I saw this note on the bottom of my charts saying acute bone marrow failure. And I remember this book that I read, called 1,000 Paper Cranes. I remember asking Dad, hey Dad, is that leukemia? And he looked me dead in the eyes at that point and he said no. 2 days later, this man that I'd never met before came in and told me, Nikhil, the good news is you're 17 and you have leukemia, but the bad news is you're 17 and you have leukemia. And I mean, I was shocked. I was devastated, but the biggest thing on my mind, I guess, that question that every cancer patient asks at first is, what are my chances, right? And I asked him, and this man I'd never met before took his glasses off, sighed, and said 10 to 20% that you'll live the next 5 years. And after that, I cried for ages. People around me, they were sharing these videos of all these cancer patients who've gone through cancer, climbed mountains, who became gurus, who've done these amazing things. But at that time, I mean, how was any of that helping? It was all a lot of self-serving stuff, a lot of them bragging, but also they didn't tell me how I could get my mind around this. Everyone was around me was telling me, Nikhil, you're strong, you're brave, my mum, my dad, my nurses, but what did they know about what I was going through? I was 17 and just told I probably wouldn't live to see 21. I mean, these thoughts kept racing through my brain, right? What was going to happen? Was I going to be in pain? Why me, of all people? I was only 17. Wasn't cancer supposed to be for older people, people who'd done something bad? I hadn't done anything like that. I wanted to dedicate my life towards helping people. It wasn't fair. So I laid in that bed, depressed, sad, frustrated, angry for days. I can't remember how long, to be honest. I was crying into my mum's arms, and I wanted to see a second way of looking at things. I wanted to find something to latch onto, to grab onto at that moment, to pull myself up. But all I could see in my immediate future was pain, misery, and probable death. There wasn't much to look forward to. But then one day, I decided, okay, let's do this thought experiment. Let's take a step back from all of this, and let's pretend what had happened to me had happened to someone else. Now today, I realize that little one simple thought experiment has changed everything, because I guess from that perspective, from that step back, I could look at me without those emotions. They dropped away for the first time. I could ask myself, what was my responses? What was all of that anger, that frustration, that sadness, what was it doing? And at that point, I realized it wasn't doing anything. Why was I doing that to myself then? Because another thing I realized then was all of that was coming from me, my brain, my mind. It didn't make sense to put myself through this. All I was doing was making things worse. But then, at the same time, I had chemo coming up in a few days. I still had all those things going against me. So I did that exact same thing for all my doubts and fears as well. So chemo, yes, it was coming up in a few days, and it was going to suck. But why does everyone just look at it as something that brings pain when, isn't it also a medicine? The very thing that could get me through all this? My doctors wouldn't be doing this to me if they didn't think I had a chance. And that 10 to 20%, that kept going in my mind. But isn't it also just that? It's a chance to get back to life, to get back to being me. Me, I was young as well. Maybe those chances weren't representative of me. And me, I felt cursed for getting cancer at 17. But wasn't it also a blessing? It meant I could get the hardest treatments possible. I had a family on my side rather than one to care for. I could get back to being me and maybe even becoming stronger because of all of this. So maybe the bad news was I was 17 and I had leukemia. But the good news was I was 17 when I had leukemia. And at that time, it was my doctor's words that I latched onto. He was a professional, he was an expert, he was a guy going out aggressively trying to treat everything at that moment. And I mean, the first time I was told those words, I was like, what the fuck? Why would you say that to me at this point? But in the end, it was actually his words that ended up coming around and showing me this. Why? Because I saw a doctor who cared. I saw someone who could make a difference, who wanted to keep on treating me because he thought I had a chance. Now, it taught me, this whole process, that you'll always have a second or third way of looking at things. I promise you memes, they're memes. Don't spoil, by the way, I'm watching it tomorrow, so yeah. Okay, I've heard some things that, okay, I don't want to keep looking. But the second thing about all of this thought process is, it doesn't actually take willpower, courage, or bravery, all those things normal motivational speakers will tell you about, because all I did, if you think about it, is I took a step back. I questioned all my perspectives until I saw the path that led me to the happiest and healthiest version of myself. And taking that path from there, it didn't take any of that. It was the only thing that made sense in that point. But I think the other key to this is that none of this happened overnight. I didn't just become this happy old optimist and just suddenly start becoming strong and not cry and be angry through chemo. I actually didn't have to be that person. By allowing myself to be human, I prepared myself for those bad moments. I didn't kid myself when they happened. Another weird thing that a nurse told me was, Nikhil, this is the day before chemo, by the way, Nikhil, you're going to be in the worst pain of your life. You're going to be pooing, you're going to be vomiting, you're going to have the worst few weeks of your life coming up after this. And at that time, at first, again, I thought, why would you be saying this to me right now? But in the end, that actually let me know that this was going to come up ahead. It kept me grounded. So when those things did happen, instead of being depressed, instead of trying to keep myself being this strong, brave soul that people make you out to be when you're a cancer survivor, I could cry, I could get down when I needed to. But in the long run, in time, I knew that all of this was being done for a reason. Now, this whole mentality, I realize now, years later, it actually has quite a bit of scientific and psychological principles that come behind it. Self-distancing. It's shown to reduce blood flow to your limbic, your emotional centers, and increase blood flow to your frontal cortex. It makes you more logical. It allows you to see those logical pathways going forward. Neuroplasticity, your brain. We all, maybe not the first years here, but we know how that concept is that neurons that wire together, fire together. So as you keep reinforcing these processes in your mind, they become stronger. And even over time, they become your automatic. It just takes 5 or 6 weeks to do that. But maintaining this, because you're letting yourself be human, because you're giving yourself a long-term goal, it's not as hard as you think to last that 5 or 6 weeks. And because you've got yourself a long-term goal for this, you actually release more and more dopamine the closer you get towards your target. Now, this is all stuff that you can apply to many things. It's helped me, this process, get through cancer, through relapse. When I was told palliation might be the best option for me, I lost a left eye, almost lost my right eye. I've had so many medical things happen to me, and this response, I automatically find myself pulling myself back up in minutes after these scenarios. That's cool. But it's also helped me do so many other things. Now, social anxiety-wise, once I came out of, before cancer, I was an Adonis. I was beautiful. Look at me. But then, after cancer, I became a better fisherman, first off. But, it changed how I looked. And it changed also my physical abilities. And to me, that was huge, right? I used to play basketball 5 to 6 days a week. It got to a point where I didn't even want to go out with old friends because I was afraid of what they'd be thinking about me. But after a while, I took a step back and I questioned, why was I feeling so sad and down all the time? And I realized that a lot of the times, this is something every one of us feels, self-doubt, right? Why do we always do this to ourselves? When first off, most people who look at you weird or who may be thinking about you, most of that is not actually happening. Most people aren't dickheads. They're not thinking anything bad of you at all. You're imagining that, right? You're doing it to yourself, in a way. But B, even if they are thinking, what a weirdo, what's wrong with that guy? Why would I want to be judgmental? Why would I want to be friends with someone judgmental like that in the first place? Why was I trying to impress them? When, in the end, they're not good people that I want to be associated with anyway. Now, this didn't happen overnight again. I didn't just suddenly go out and start roaming around the streets and being some YOLO optimist, as I said before. No, it took a while, but I slowly got out of my shell, started walking the dog around the neighborhood, and soon I was getting healthier. Most importantly, I was happy with myself for the first time in a long time. It's also helped me do so many other things. It helped me find the medicine that's probably kept me alive today. When I relapsed, I was told palliation might be the only option. I went out, had a year of medical school knowledge behind me, so that helped quite a bit, but I actually went a little bit beyond that and didn't just look through your regular databases, but I said, hey, I've got this condition, there's not much doctors can do about it. Let's go to clinicaltrials.gov instead. Let's look at the most emerging new treatments that are out there and evaluate them. So I looked them up, found 50 different things that could possibly help, looked up one in particular, went through PubMed, looked at the literature that there was a phase 2 studies behind it, I pitched it to my doctor, I got that medicine, and it's probably the thing that's kept me alive post-second transplant therapy. This mentality, it also helps me literally ignore chronic pain. Now, you might see me twitching and cramping and spasming every now and then. It might stop me from talking at some point, but that used to really, really eat away at me, even me, someone who's managed to do all those things before. And that mentality, it was tough to break the chronic pain and the depression that that brought. But over time, because I read into chronic pain, I looked at how it actually affected your attentional centers, made them grow, made your limbic centers more reactive, you became hypersensitive towards the pain. So I combined that with knowledge that I had from things that had helped me in the past, right? Antidepressants, which didn't work on my pain pathways in any way, they actually made me feel better. They made me ignore the cramps. I was still cramping, but I wasn't affected. So I said, hey, let's take a step back. Let's try and emulate that. And I knew that in just 5 or 6 weeks, I could rewire my brain to stop feeling that pain, to start ignoring it when it happened. I mean, we can't ignore pain as it comes on, that physiological symptom. Can't do that, but what we can do is control our response to it. Nowadays, you'll see me cramping. You might see me cramping on the dance floor later tonight, but I seriously won't be in pain and actually feeling that pain because of it, because I have this mindset now. It's automatic. It does this without any willpower, courage, bravery, or strength at all. And most importantly of all, I think now, it's helped me start up this company that's creating some life-saving products that I'll be talking about soon. Something that could change the way we practice medicine forever. And what this does, it allows me to always keep taking a step back and thinking, what's the most efficient way I can spend my time? Because when you're in a startup, you've got a small team, you're working on many problems at once, you're trying to create a big company from a small little starting point. You've got to be as efficient as possible. You've got to make everything happen. It's helped me with so much. But at the same time, it still couldn't make me outthink depression. It still couldn't make me out stronger. Now me, I'm a guy who at 17 was told he had a 10 to 20% chance of living, and in just a few days found a second way of looking at things. After a few months of chemo, I went and did a 200k bike ride 2 months after it stopped. I went ahead, I played poker. At the last minute, I went around the world, traveled there, put in $10,000 of my own money, and beat the pros at their own game. I've done so many things. The most impressive of all was probably after relapsing and told I might be dead in the next few months, I found something to smile about 10 minutes later, and yet I still couldn't outthink that depression that I was feeling. And that depression, it didn't just come from pain. It didn't just come from other things. At that time, I actually wasn't feeling that much pain. It was medicine that was doing that to me. Now, medicine, it's something that's tough. And we are really high risk of getting this. Depression, anxiety, and other mental illnesses. Now, what makes us more vulnerable? Well, first off, our personalities. We're alphas, we think we're just gonna tough it out. Depression is for the weak. We've got this mentality that we just gotta push through. That's one thing. Another big factor is that we're afraid of coming out to get help because we're afraid of, the repercussions that'll have on our careers and things like that. That's something systemic. It's hard to change in a way, but things are being done. I went to the AMA. They have a mental health conference every year, and it is sort of getting better. Probably not all the time. We're still facing a lot of bullying as junior doctors. It's something we're going to have to face, which sucks. But we also have this culture of service ingrained into us that we have to be strong for our patients. Otherwise, how will our patients be strong themselves? But one of the biggest factors is we don't actually take our health seriously. Like as medical students, but also as doctors in the future. I guess we're dealing with much more complex things. We feel like what we're going through isn't really that bad, right? But it is, if it makes you feel crappy. Now, I'm going to tell you guys about the first time that I went through depression. And again, it wasn't due to medical stuff, it wasn't due to pain. It was when I lost a friend to this condition. So I'm going to call him Fred through this story, even though that's not his real name, but basically, I'll tell you about him. So after my second bone marrow transplant, I went through all that, and a nurse introduced me to this guy who was about to go through a transplant as well. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll help. And soon we got talking. He was scared, as everyone is, going into this really difficult procedure. I remember just how much seeing another patient changed my life. Before I went through a bone marrow transplant, despite, that mentality that I had, I was still afraid at that time of this really big procedure that was going to happen, and I managed to confer that onto him. He went through the treatment. He was going fine. He was going great, actually. And I still remember the day that we went and saw him, just like a day or two before his release. He was smiling. He was there with his family. His brother was there. Everything was looking good. But then a week later, I got the word that he'd actually passed away from an infection. And at that point, I was devastated more than anything that I could describe. And for weeks, I just couldn't find anything to feel happy about. I couldn't think my way around this. I mean, this guy, he was just 30. He had a young kid. What had he done to deserve this? Why did he get through this and survive? And why was I still here, you know? That existential crisis that I went through at that point, it lasted for months. I couldn't bring myself to get out of bed most days. I couldn't bring myself to shower. All those symptoms of depression that we're taught about, they're very, very real. Your brain is chemically rigged to make everything feel harder. And it was harder. But then I talked to someone about it. Now, what I've been saying this whole time is that you can always take a step back, look at all the different perspectives, all the different options you have. You should always try and do that and pick the one that leads you to being happiest and healthiest. But what depression takes away from you is that ability to think outside the box. You get stuck in that feeling, in that moment of depression, that you can't find a way of thinking about things. But friends, family, professionals, anyone else, they come with an inbuilt second perspective. And so I went and talked to Dad. I asked him, Dad, what's the point of all this, you know? Why am I struggling to get back to full health? Why was I trying to help people when people like Fred could just pass away like this? And you know, I was lying in bed, he was hugging me, and he said, Nikhil, we're all gonna die someday. And again, I was like, what the hell? What? I just told you this and you told me that? He did pull back after that and he said, you know what? We are all gonna die, but at the same time, life is what you make of it, and it's what you make of the world, the way that you leave it in when you leave. And that really got me starting to think, because then when I took a step back from there, I could finally see things from Fred's perspective. And in the end, those that we lose, one thing that we can't deny is that they would have wanted us to keep going on. They'd be wanting us to smile, to laugh, to be as successful and happy as possible, but B, they still live on through how they've changed the world. He made his family, he showed them what real strength was. He showed me what real strength was, laughing in the face of pain, but they also move on by how they've changed us. And the best way we can honor those who we've lost, something that you guys as future doctors will have to face at some point, is to learn from them. And Fred, he taught me so much. So A, he taught me that we can't blame ourselves for things that we can't help. I think, going back to MASH, right, one of my favorite shows, Colonel Potter in that show, he says, rule number 1 of medicine, of war, is that young people die. And that rule number 2 is that doctors can't change rule number 1. It sucks that this has to be the case. But at the same time, we can still make a huge difference. That goes on to lesson B. We can and always do make a difference, no matter how much we think we can't. Now, medicine, I think you guys, you know, as you go through clinical years, you sort of realize, you sort of feel it getting sapped away from you. That thing that brought a lot of you guys into this, the desire, that passion to make a difference, that sort of gets leashed away from you. Not just, you know, as you face things like loss and you face things like chronic pain, so many things that you can't treat as a doctor that you feel worthless about over time. It's not just that, but also the bullying, the study, the intense hours that we do. All of that culminates into you feeling like, what's the point after a while? But let me tell you this, if there's anything you guys take away from this, please let it be this. The things that have changed my life over the last few years, the things that made my doctor special to me, it wasn't the medical decisions they made. Instead, it was the times that they, you know, talked to me about fishing before an appointment. It was a time that one doctor held my hand as I was going to a biopsy. He was on his way to another department anyway, but he kept assuring me that I was going to get my pain medications, I was going to be all right, this is going to be there, and it's going to be finding out what's wrong with me. It was that time my doctor spent 2 minutes of his day writing a letter to the medical entry board, allowing me to sit the UMAT exam, which allowed me to fulfill my dream of becoming a future doctor, right? Those tiny little things, they took 2 minutes out of the doctor's day. But they're the things that have changed my life. That ability to make people feel cared for, that's your biggest weapon in medicine. That's the biggest asset that you have. Me, one day, a few years later after this, I started going through pain. I started going through depression because of the pain. I didn't even realize I was going through that. That's what depression does. It takes away your ability to, think and take that step back. But I almost wanted to end it one day. I've been thinking about it for weeks. Instead of walking in front of a train though, I went and walked across the road and saw the doctor that had first treated me, who told me that the good news is you're 17, you have leukemia, but the bad news is you're 17 and you have leukemia. I knew there was someone across the road who would make me feel cared for. I hadn't felt cared for in a year. And that's the power that you guys will all have and you will always have in your lifetime as practitioners. And it doesn't matter about the outcome either, because I've sat down with dying patients and their families after they've passed away. And they've told me, that time that we played snakes and ladders, right? Just a family little thing before they passed away. That was one of the things they remembered on their deathbed. Another family told me that time we took them out of hospital for a day and spent Father's Day eating a barbecue at our place. That literally changed their life in those last few moments. But you don't have to go that extra mile, right? You guys don't have the time to do that. Those tiny little 2-minute things though, making someone feel cared about, making someone feel listened to when they come in to speak to you, they will change people's lives. So always go out and try and do that, because guess what? It won't just change their lives, it'll also change yours as well. Because instead of going into hospital thinking, hey, here we go, another 10-hour shift, another thankless job, I'm going to be pushed out of my ass, trying to do all these different things. Instead of going into work every day doing that, you're going to be thinking, whose pain can I ease today? Whose day can I make? Whose life can I change? And that's huge. It's the difference between life and death for you guys as well. And this isn't just me, some inspirational, motivational speaker saying this. There's literally scientific evidence showing that patients' connection and gratitude, it actually has a positive impact on physician and nurse wellness and burnout levels. So always go out and do that. See, we can't always push through depression. We don't have to do it on our own. Speaking to someone was the only way I was able to finally start getting through things. And you know what? The very things that make a professional something that's really weird to talk about is actually the thing that makes them perfect for this. A psychiatrist or a psychologist, they are, first off, they will never have to see you in real life, right? There is absolutely no fear of judgment. They legally cannot tell anyone what you've told them, right? And thirdly, they're literally professionals at what they do. They've probably seen someone who's been through something similar. They can help you out. But even if you don't, or you can't get to someone professional to see about this, ask a friend. When you're depressed, you'll feel alone. You feel like no one gives a crap. But think about it. If you knew one of your friends was going through what you were going through, wouldn't you want to be there for them? Trust me, there will be at least 1 or 2 people in your friends list who will want to be there for you. Worst case, just drop me a line as well. I'll have links to my bio later on. But D, the last thing is that we shouldn't feel like it's selfish to take care of ourselves too. The poker and fishing, I do this for the kids, people. Alright? I do this to keep myself happy. And you know what? It's not selfish of me to take those breaks when I need them. Right? I want to encourage people to take on poker. Right? Probably not the most responsible thing to do. You guys are young, you don't have too much money. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have put that up there. But there are so many other things that you guys can do, right? So many hobbies, so many different things that you can volunteer for as our, we'll give them a round of applause, the NSW MSc coordinators for the day. Go out there and do those things. Download Meetup on your phone. if you don't have friends, and go out there and meet people doing some awesome things in other spaces. Expand your horizons. Think outside the box. And now in this second half of this talk, I'm going to be telling you guys about growth hacking, marketing, startups, things like that. Completely different to exactly what we were just talking about, right? But this is something that can expand your horizons, and it's not just, applicable to those of you who are go-getters, who are volunteering your time, going and doing things for student societies or charities, things outside the box. It'll also help you in the future, right? If you want to, in the future, raise some public awareness, get some funding for a clinical trial, there's a political will behind an illness or something like that. If you knew how to market yourself, how to growth hack, how to get to PR and get your message out there to journalists, you'll be able to do that. When you get out there, start running your own practices, you'll have a little bit of an edge because of this, because you're now thinking from the perspective of people who are coming to you. And it'll probably make you better practitioners as well if you always keep taking a step back and looking at things from someone else's perspective. And plus, it's fun and it's interesting too. So, let's talk about growth hacking in terms of PR. So that's public relations, talking to media. So I saw this organization a couple of weeks ago trying to do something special. Now you guys may have heard about Dr. Preeti Reddy. She was murdered in cold blood by a man who just couldn't take being told that she didn't want to see him anymore. She was stuffed in a suitcase, left to die. The man went ahead and drove himself into a truck and killed himself and really seriously injured the truck driver too. And I saw people in my friends list calling out as she was missing. I joined that group. I wanted to go to that event, but then I saw that there was this opportunity. They were holding a vigil in honor of her, and I was like, I needed to help. I had some skills. I knew from my business how to get this out there to media, how to sell this and to make this big so that they could accomplish what they wanted to. Because this group of doctors, they weren't just helping people in these really, really horrible scenarios. I read the stories of the things that women go through every day just to feel safe in their own homes, and I was like, I needed to do something about it. I needed to help this organization out. So I made it happen, right? I just finished a thesis, I had time on my hands, and I was like, let's do this. Found out about this on Friday. The vigil was happening on Saturday, so keep this in mind. This all happened in one day. So, what did I do first? How do you get the media's attention? So I had a small email list from my startup thing. It wasn't really, in the domestic violence space. It was like all startup journalists, business, tech bloggers, all that kind of stuff. But they had a press release that they made and that they used to talk about the issue. So I got that press release and I pitched it to entice their interest. So how do you get journalists on board, right? You got to take a step back and think about things from the journalist's perspective. First off, journalists, they're people. They're lazy, right? They're not like us doctors who are complete nerds. They won't go out, they don't know how to actually go through papers and research things. So you've got to put it there for them. You've got to make your pitch concise. You've got to make it really, really compelling. And how you do that is you also got to think about what makes them tick, right? And journalists, they want to write something newsworthy. They want to get shares. They want to get promoted in their jobs. They want to make a buzz happen around whatever they're talking about. So I talked about the issue. I reminded them that it was a part of major news cycle, right? Because that was something that was going on national news. I used every single little thing that we had on our side. So we had young Australian finalist of the year, Thorung Chawla, who was also advocacy for domestic violence. I knew him personally, and he didn't directly support the actual vigil, but we knew that he supported the movement and what we were doing, so we used that in our pitch. We also talked about something that was currently going on. So ScoMo, Prime Minister Scott Morrison, he recently announced this $10 billion plan to help domestic violence out. And so we put a little bit of that in there as well, because that was another thing that was going on in the news. And then we told them about all the details about this. And because we were doing it in multiple cities around Australia, we also pitched this as a national vigil, because then that's something big. That's something that gets people's brains going. That's something that gets journalists going, hey, I need to talk about this, otherwise my colleague will, and he'll get my job, right? We also talked to them about some news features that we'd already gotten on board. How we did that, this is actually the second pitch that we did. We actually got Channel 9, SBS, and a few others before this, and we re-emailed people out after that. But I'll tell you how I did that later. I'm talking about press releases now, so I'll focus on this. So a good press release, it should be concise, should capture their attention. The email that I just did, that's a pitch. You want to make it even shorter. You want to get your points across. But in here, in this, you want to be emotive. You want to use emotion wherever you can. You want to convey information about what the organization is, and you want media to talk about it. So right now, this is the first pitch that I'd gotten, that I'd edited up a little bit. As you can see, there's not enough stats in there. There's not enough figures. There's not enough stuff to really entice people. It is emotive. It is really, really damn emotive for people who know the condition and who know the people writing it. But to a journalist who's seen hundreds of these and who sees hundreds of these, you need to make yours stand out. So what I did after this was I added stats and figures. I showed how domestic violence is a gendered issue, that women face it more. I entered all those things in, and then I also made it urgent as well by talking about all the various things that happen right now. So there's 10 women who died to this just by that point in March. Around almost 100 women die every year due to domestic violence too. And then you leverage everything that you have on your side. Any major achievements that you've made as an organization, keep plugging those to them. Every single time you talk about it. Media support you've got, expertise, that was our big thing. We are a doctor group, 350 strong, right? We have so many people who are experts on this issue, and we have powerful allies in Dharamshala and other people as well that we also added in. And because of that, we got numerous papers. We got the Daily Telegraph, we got SMH, we got a few people coming to the event on that night. Remember, this is 2 hours after I just joined this. We managed to get that going. Now, in terms of how to email people, there are mass emailing apps out there, right? And first off, read up the laws. You don't want to be spamming people. You don't want to be, you don't want to have your accounts deregistered or anything like that. But you can do business proposals. This is just general advice. Look this up in detail before you do any of these things. But also personalize them. Use those mass emailing apps to find someone's first name or last name, the organization that they work in, and add that into the email so it doesn't make it look like you're just emailing 100 different people, something that journalists will then get turned off by, right? Key to this is making the title really, really punchy and stand out, right? So we made it the national visual, run by 350 plus doctors on domestic violence for murdered colleague, which makes it even more personal, something that they want to come out and talk to us about. And that's something that we made our title, something that'll stand out in their press, in their inboxes, instead of just, we're running a vigil for Dr. Prithvi Reed. Pay 10 to 15 bucks for that auto follow-up feature. That's really, really good. After a few days, after you've made this pitch, you can then go on and talk about how, how the event went, first off. But secondly, if they don't open up that first time, which they often won't, remember they get hundreds of emails, you emailing them a second time, that'll get back to the top of the inbox. That'll get you that. And then it's okay to re-email these guys, but usually do it after a few weeks, not on the same campaign or story, or even if it is, make sure you have an update on it to show that you've made some progress. And that's actually really good to do. Because then, if you have done something cool, right? If you're doing a Vampire Cup campaign, you've gotten, a 400% increase in people donating from last year. Whatever thing that you're doing, make sure you boast about that in the next email, or your first one, whatever you do. Email lists, this is how you construct them. Try and make it as organized as possible. You don't want to be emailing, first off, journalists from, newspapers. It's not easy to make these lists, which is why instead of actually going out and looking up every single journalist's name and email and stuff like that, what I do instead is I took a step back and I'm like, look, let's look for, there must be an app for this out there, right? There must be someone doing this for you. And then when I did do that, instead of spending hours scrolling through people's pages looking for emails that they want to keep hidden, I found a guy on People Per Hour, right? There's sites like Freelancer, Upwork, you may have heard of them. Basically, people in developing countries, they need the cash. They've got these apps which troll through email lists, which troll through the internet and find these leads for you, and then they'll literally just do it for $10 for 100 emails. That $10 means a lot to them. They've got apps that do things, so I'm not like, a slaver by any means by doing this. And that he can create email lists for me for whatever I need, not just for journalists in this case, but also for business leads, for all the aged care contacts that I need for my business, right? Instead of spending hours of my time doing that, I give him $10 because I think my time is a little bit more valuable than that, and it gets it done in the same amount of time. Now, another big tool that you have when you're talking to journalists in particular is Twitter. Now, they're all on that. So what you do, find an article, right, about your subject, literally Google their Twitter name, go to their profile, tweet them something, not exactly this, add hashtags, add a link to your press release, tweet them, use their handle first. So if you say @that person, it actually doesn't go to your profile, it actually goes directly to them, so they don't know that you've just tweeted this out to 60 journalists. And then what you do next is you hit their following button and you go to all the related pages of suggested other people in that space. Screen them, you'll find that lady, she was probably not the right person because she talked about politics. This lady, she talks about Nauru, she talks about social justice issues, she talked about feminism. That's someone I want to tweet. And then you just keep repeating this over and over, right? You see how many tabs I have open there? 10? You can tweet 60 journalists in about 10 minutes. It's that simple to do. And through this, we got to Times of India, we got to SBS Online, we got to ABC Online. Remember, this is just 4 hours now after I started this campaign. They were all going to be going to that vigil. Emails and Twitter, they're great. But another thing you got to do is call people up, especially TV news. If you want to get them up, just 5 or 6 calls from us. That's what got us TV coverage, right? And that's what got us TV coverage from not just one, but all Australian major TV outlets, except for the ABC, which is weird, because that's the one you'd think you'd be there for this kind of event. And again, in just one day, that was before 5 p.m. I started working on this at 10 a.m. on that day, right? When you call them up, don't bother trying to pitch to the guy who's at reception. Tell them, hey, this is what we're doing. Can we get to newsroom? Can we get to the news desk? And they'll put you straight through. That's when you have a 20-second pitch about why your organization is cool, what you guys are doing. You have that ready to speak to them. They'll sometimes put you directly onto a reporter. They'll sometimes put you onto the cameramen who go out, and they'll put you straight through. And that's how you get your message out there. Now, this all led to some amazing things happening for this organization. So Doctors Against Violence Towards Women, they're on national news because of this. This opened up us getting contacted by politicians, deep relationships with journalists we continue to speak to. Those politicians, by the way, I won't name them, but let's say they're in the top 5 of all the major parties in Australia, so now we can make a huge difference. They had some programs they were working on, trying to get some funding for some trauma centers opened and things like that that all built momentum with. They didn't have a Facebook page when I started, they didn't have a website, but it led to us getting 700 likes in a couple of days. 80 newsletter signups. They are really, really good because they are people who are really keen on what you guys are doing, who will read up on what you guys are doing and back your things forward. And they also got us 50 or 60 extra members who are all doctors, by the way, in just a few weeks. Now, a combo of this and our contacts has led us to get to those power brokers, and we're using similar tactics again to get us onto news again. And this time, this is for other things. So we're going to be on BuzzFeed soon, Pro Bono Australia, ABC Radio has a founder, spokesperson talking regularly. And yeah, that's stuff that I used in my startup as well. Yes, we had some awesome stories for my startup, also for this organization, but you know what? There's other ways that you can growth hack anything that you're trying to do and use media to do it as well. If you're a vegan, you can go and throw carrots and lettuce at KFC goers. That was something that happened. You can block off a city's major infrastructure and transport, or if you don't want to be a dick, you don't want to go to jail, just throw up a quick page in your website with a clickbait title like "Vegans Eat Raw Vegetables at a Barbecue Event" with a funny photo, share it in a few Facebook groups, and go just as viral. If you're doing a competition for a blood drive, tell them about this handsome med student, ex-cancer patient, who's been helping to drive the movement, and maybe you can get that on the news as well. And then spreading your event, getting people to there. Instagram's another great way to do this. You have some hashtags. You have places that you can look up. Now find those influencers who have between 10 to 100K people. If you go too high, probably not going to get a response from them, because again, these guys get thousands of emails. But then pitch to them. Simple little one like that over there on the left. Or wait, yeah, on the left for you guys. That's all we told them. And we got 4 or 5 people to share. 2 of them actually came out, and that got us to hundreds of people. Look for the right audiences. So you got your Facebook groups. We actually contacted a few of the UCID, NSW med groups and societies. We simply go to Facebook, look up whatever you're looking for, and then go to this tab, groups, and then first off, join those groups, make a post. Don't be spammy, right? Otherwise, people just won't respond and they'll hate you. Instead, go and speak to their admins, right? Send them a message, and then they'll post it up in the group for you if it's a cool event, right? So we did that. We got a few people coming from med schools, from feminist societies, and we got that happening too. And the event itself, we picked a central place, town hall, and then we set up everything in advance. We made sure that we had posters. We had people, coming, just walking down the street, coming into our event as well. We only had 2 people on the ground to start, but then we had volunteers at the event itself. And all of this made one of the most amazing nights happen in my life. It made such an impact, and now this group is doing so much more as well. Now quickly, I'm going to go into my personal brand and Facebook, social media, how to hack that. So me, I started writing in 2014, got a few 100K views on my blog, just because it's an awesome blog, you should all read it. But over years of doing this, I was making an impact, but I only had 850 likes on Facebook. I wasn't really getting that many views off that platform. I was reaching people, I was making a difference, I was getting emails, talking to people, but I'd stagnated. So what I did was I started going and growth hacking social media, right? This is what I get on my Facebook page right now. $0 in ad spending. I get 70K impressions, I get 4,000 post engagements, I get 30 to 50K click views to my website every single month, right? That's an average week for me, right? And that's with $0 paid reach. Look at the page insights that you have on your page, right? And you want to hack the algorithm. Facebook, what it does, it sends messages out to your first 10% of your followers, and it sees how people engage with it. If you get likes in that early process, it will send it out to 20 or 30%, and it'll keep going from there, right? So you want to make sure you like your post, you get your friends to like your post. You want to make sure that you have something engaging that will make people want to react and comment to it. And then that's how you get it going out there. You want to post at the right times every day as well, right? This is another key thing. What kind of posts get to the most people? Now, have a look at the ones that have gotten 25K views, 10K views, 13K views, and look what they are. Images, right? Links on Facebook, unfortunately, even though they're probably my best things, right? My blogs, they don't get as many views. Why? Because they're not shareable. The key to Facebook is shareable content. When you go on Facebook, just take a step back and think about it, right? You're going to see an article, if it's got a clickbaity title, there's a 10% chance you're actually going to go read that article, right? But you might share it if it's got a clickbait title. That's cool. But when you share a photo from a page, when you share a video from a page, that actually has the page's link to it. So anyone who engages with that post, they'll be able to get to you. They'll be able to follow you. That's what drives growth most. These are the clicks that you get through from there, right? As you can see, this is like one meme that I put up, right? And I always put a link to something that, it doesn't even, how does that relate? It's a dad jokes blog that I did, essentially just stupid shit my dad says, right? And it got 100 clicks from 400 total post clicks to my page, just by having that, and having a funny damn meme that I just saw and saved on my phone. You're doing it anyway. May as well make it work for you, Same thing with videos. Have a look at this one. This is flu vaccine. I did a video on that sort of thing, right? And this is one of my most viewed videos. Guess why it got viewed? It's because it's got some controversy behind it. Anti-vaxxers got on this page. And then I posted it to my pro-vax, pro-science groups. And guess what? We had a war going. We got some information spread. There was a bit of bit of harm done, I think, a bit of psychological trauma on both sides. But in the end, we may have converted a couple of anti-vaxxers, but we got the message out there to a lot more people, right? And that's how we got that out there. Humor, controversy, and sex, if you've got it, sells, right? Use that. I've clearly got the last of those, right? But what if you've got no limited followers, you don't have friends either? How do you get your stuff up there? Hit up Facebook groups. Like I told you before, right? Facebook groups, the reason why they're so cool is unlike pages or personal profiles, they're not limited by how many people they go out to. They get shared into a group of thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of people who are all interested in what you do, right? Don't spam them, right? Don't just put up a link to your GoFundMe. Engage, post relevant memes, content, links, interact with the posts, get people going. And if you do things like this, you get a lot of reactions. You also get your page linked to it too, if you've linked something from your page. If you do something like this, trying to get people to like your page, you're going to get no reactions in like 5 or 6 days, right? That's the difference. You've got to make it engaging. And this, you can also always just get shared on subtle curry traits. And going viral is just another way that you can do things as well to make things go a lot faster. That's something that I'm going to be working on too, just experimenting with that. I'm not perfect at this. I'm still learning myself. But Instagram. Now this is where hashtags are really good. Now look at that on the side over there. You get notifications about hashtags if you like posts that have certain things common about them, right? So Spoonies, that's a term for chronic illness people. I like a lot of chronic illness blogs because I have chronic illnesses. That gets notified to me. So I get the top post from that in my newsfeed. Use those hashtags and you'll be on those 1.8 million following things and you'll be showing your thing to random people as well. Get your things shared by pages. This is one, if you guys want to make your own personal brand, start their lifestyle, they're literally looking for people to post stuff about med school, to post things about them being doctors. Look at that post, it got 5,000 likes, right? I shared one of my stories to them, like this message about how doctors can always make a difference, and guess what? That got me like 300, 400 likes. Quick word about branding strategy. With an organization, you've got to be a bit more careful, a bit more, you've got to think deeply about this before you go out. You've got to think, hey, I am a medical student, maybe I should be a little bit less memey, a little bit more, sciencey and all that kind of stuff. With the brand though, you've got to make sure you don't turn off the right people. So you've got to make sure you get that right. You've got to think deeply. And with startups, now that's science in and of itself too. So this is a little product video on what we're doing. Essentially we've got this device which converts any bed into a hospital bed for just $110 cost, right? So that in and of itself is something that's pretty cool. Hospital beds, we know that they reduce rates of falls by 30%, time spent in hospital goes down by 35% if you've got pneumonia, but it's the sensors underneath which are really, really cool because what they do is they map people's movement. They can map pressure sores, falls, they can alert nurses, loved ones if these things happen, and they'll get the word out to doctors, and they'll also assist doctors in reducing their time spent on these issues as well. They'll alert you, they'll also allow you to be monitoring your patients at home. Our devices are really, really affordable, right? So that's where we want to go, where 90% of people who are elderly and disabled actually live. So that's my startup in a few words. If you guys want to do something like that, right? First off, my suggestion is to first off, validate your problem, right? Validate, you may have some assumptions. You may think, hey, this is something cool that we can do, let's do it. But before you even start, remember, it's going to be 5 to 7 years that you might have to put into this thing. Look at how big the market is. Look at your competitors, what they're doing. Look at the regulatory landscapes, patenting, how you're going to make money. Start thinking about these things. You might not know that as medical students, but YouTube, it has all of this information in like a little blog. Go read blogs of other startup founders, literally email them and just ask for a coffee, right? Me chatting to a few founders, that got me started. That changed the way my whole business went. Me talking, right? We started actually with trying to make this all-inclusive hospital bed that would fix things forever because it had all these extra features. But then we realized we were going to go up against these really, really consolidated, really, really solid competitors who were working in a $7 billion space. Big market, right? But it's not huge. Why go to them and try and fix a problem that they were already solving really, really well with a huge, 1,000 people companies when we can go to somewhere that was underserved, right? Just elderly populations, nursing, home care. We could provide them with a solution that they currently weren't getting, an affordable one. That market is $400 billion. Home care alone is worth $250 billion. Why not design something for them? That's when we pivoted, we changed our business, we changed our product. We created this smart inclining bed instead. And then we also made it something that people were really, really keen on by giving it that upside. And this is something we realized from pitching to investors. We pitched to a lot of people. And we realized that what really got them perked up, yeah, we had a cool product. Yeah, it could do these awesome things. But when we talked about the app, the machine learning behind this, the way that this could scale in the future, that you could connect, heart rate monitors, smartwatches, other things to that, and get a multitude of health data that could actually inform doctors of how their patients were at any point in time, that's when their ears really picked up. Because when you're investing in a startup, you're not trying to make a few $100K, you're trying to make $1 billion, right? It's a very risky investment. You're going into this new market, right, with this new product that you've never seen before. You want to make it something that's worth their while. How do you do that? You give it upside. And then it's all a science as well, right? Before you go out there, read the literature, find out your problem, go and talk to people. The reason why we actually changed our product in the first place was because we went and talked to nursing homes. We called up literally 50 of them, and we were like, you know what do you guys need? And then we realized that, hey, the bed is pretty cool. Even our smaller bed that is affordable is pretty cool and something that they want, but it's actually pressure sores, fall detection, things that they currently didn't have that made us look deeper into that problem. And we realized that we could do it a lot cheaper. Our pressure sensor detector does it for a few $100. We used technology that was already out there but being used for other devices. We put it into this, something a bed sensor could do. And that's made us now, I won't say how many million, but it's valued us at that point. But we want to actually get valued at more, so when our first raise comes up, we raise a couple million rather than just one. And that's what we're doing at Get to Sleep Easy. Again, it's all been a science. We're still learning, but that's how you do that. I really encourage you guys to go out there. Even if you don't have to put in a lot of money, you don't have to become a poker pro and put all your capital into that like I did, right? Go and join hackathons. Go to startup events, go to meetups. Go and learn about these things, see if they interest you. They might not, right? That's cool too. But you'll get a lot of skills out of this if you guys think outside the box. And hopefully I've given you some things to think about today. Now, if you guys want to get in touch, that's me. All my details are there. And yeah, I mean, how much time do we have? Do we have any time for questions? No? All right, it's been a standard lecture then. Self-directed learning from now on. Alrighty, thanks guys. Sorry if I've kept you too long.
That was like,
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.